It's that time again. We're talking big paychecks and brutal knockouts as we close out 2024 and take a look back at the top 5 highest earning UFC fighters of the year. While this list certainly favors the top pay-per-view earners, there might be a few names that surprise you. So pop open some champagne or grab a cup of hot chocolate and make sure to hit the like button if you enjoy the video. But first, a quick disclaimer that most athletic commissions do not disclose fighter pay, so while Venom sponsorship and fight bonuses are released, the purses I'll be showing in this video are just projections based on disclosed earnings from previous events. With that said, let's jump in with 3 honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. At number 8, the current middleweight champion Dricus Du Plessis. Dricus took the belt from Sean Strickland at UFC 297 in January of last year, where he likely earned between $350,000 and $500,000 as the challenger, along with $32,000 in Venom sponsorship, also known as Fight Week incentive, and a $50,000 Performance of the Night bonus, which when totaled up, comes out to an estimated $507,000. But where he really made his money was at 305 in Perth, Australia, where he defended the belt against the former champion Israel Adesanya. As the champ, Du Plessis took home between $1 and $1.5 million, along with the champion's rate of $42,000 in sponsorship, and at the standard pay-per-view rate outlined over the past several years in both Eddie Alvarez and Francis Ngannou's released contract documents, and assuming 600,000 buys, Dricus would have earned an additional $600,000. All pay-per-view revenue is based on the event's buy rate, which is no longer publicly released. I'll be estimating each buy rate from historical averages and online sources, but keep in mind, the UFC stated that pay-per-view numbers were down last year overall. With that said, it amounts to a $1,892,000 paycheck. That takes his grand total on the year to just under $2.4 million. Next up is the featherweight champion Ilia Topuria at number 7. Like Du Plessis, Topuria first captured the title at the beginning of the year when he knocked out the longtime champion Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 298. The event took place in California, so the payouts were disclosed by the California State Athletic Commission, and while his purse was listed at $350,000, disclosed amounts often significantly understate the real payouts for top earners. Based on Topuria's rumored going rate and reported earnings from other first-time title challengers, he could have actually been pushing $1 million guaranteed. Along with the challenger's $32,000 in Venom sponsorship and a well-deserved Performance of the Night bonus, he pocketed an estimated $832,000 on the night. He earned even more for his next fight at UFC 308, where he knocked out another all-time featherweight great in Max Holloway. This time, he would have pulled a $1.5 to $2 million base as champion, as well as $42,000 in sponsorship and another $50,000 performance bonus, along with $400,000 in pay-per-view revenue, for a total of $2,242,000, bringing his 2024 total to $3,074,000. Speaking of Max Holloway, he comes in at number 6 on the list. If you're watching this video, you're likely very familiar with how his year kicked off when he claimed the BMF belt as well as knockout of the year and possibly all time against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. He commands a pretty lofty purse even while not the current champion, likely between $1 and $1.5 million guaranteed, along with $32,000 in sponsorship and not one but 2 $300,000 bonuses for Performance of the Night and Fight of the Night. And while it's possible that he earned pay-per-view points for this fight, since he was not the current champion or in the main or co-main event, I'm not including that in the estimate, meaning that his total comes out to $1,882,000. And while the result was much less favorable in UFC 308, he still took home a nice paycheck. A guaranteed purse of $1 to $1.5 million, $32,000 in sponsorship, and I am assuming he earned pay-per-view as the other half of this title fight main event for an additional $400,000, taking his total to $1,682,000. That puts his grand total at $3,564,000. Kicking off the list at number 5 is the former bantamweight champion Sugar Sean O'Malley. O'Malley started the year as champion, meaning he was making pay-per-view from the jump, starting with his first defense at UFC 299 against Marlon Cheeto Vera. He dominated the fight from start to finish and took home $1.5 to $2 million guaranteed, as well as $42,000 in sponsorship, a $50K Performance of the Night bonus, and $400,000 in pay-per-view, assuming the standard rate with 500,000 buys, totaling $2,242,000. He returned for the most expensive UFC event of all time at UFC 306 at the Sphere in Las Vegas with a production cost north of $20 million. While he ultimately lost the fight to the current bantamweight champion Merab Dvalishvili, he pulled in $1.5 to $2 million guaranteed with $42,000 in Venom sponsorship, and based on an estimated 600,000 buys for this one-of-a-kind event, $600,000 in pay-per-view revenue, for a total of $2,392,000 on the night, taking O'Malley's 2024 total up to $4,634,000. At number 4, we have the former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. In August, at UFC 305, he lost to Dricus Du Plessis in his bid to reclaim the middleweight championship. While he only fought once last year, his insane guaranteed purse kept him firmly in the top 5. It's been reported by John Nash on the Hey Not The Face podcast that back when Adesanya was the champ, he earned $4 to $5 million guaranteed. I'm assuming he took in a similar amount for this outing, considering it was his 12th straight championship appearance, along with $32,000 in sponsorship and $750,000 in pay-per-view revenue, bringing his total for the fight and the year to a whopping $5,282,000. Like Adesanya, number 3 Stipe Miocic also fought only once last year but pulled an impressive purse. When Francis Ngannou signed with the PFL after his UFC contract expired, it opened up negotiations for top-tier UFC heavyweights, allowing them to demand more money since they now have the option of leaving for the PFL to go fight Francis. Obviously, Uncle Dana couldn't allow that to happen, so the purse strings were loosened, meaning that for UFC 309, Miocic was able to demand a whopping $5 million purse for this fight, along with $32,000 in Venom sponsorship, and while he's not the champion so pay-per-view points are not guaranteed, I'll assume he earned them for the sake of this estimate, which at the premium rate outlined in Ngannou's UFC contract, comes out to another $850,000, totaling $5,882,000 on the night and the year. At number 2, we have the current light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira. In contrast to Adesanya and Miocic, Pereira's workhorse mentality is what landed him this high up on the list. He fought 3 times in 2024, starting with the biggest event of the year at UFC 300, where he knocked out the former champ Jamal Hill to defend his title. As it was somewhat of a short notice fight, Poatan had leverage to earn big bucks for headlining the event. According to Nash's reporting, Pereira's base rate is around $2 million, so for this fight, he likely made between $3 and $3.5 million, along with his sponsorship pay, and if the estimate of 800,000 pay-per-view buys is accurate, $1.4 million in revenue, all totaling up to $4,692,000. For his next fight at UFC 303, Poatan saved the day after the sport's biggest star Conor McGregor dropped out just 2 weeks before the event. Gilbert Burns claimed on the Show Me the Money podcast he believes Pereira earned at least $5 million for the fight. Starting with his $3 to $3.5 million base for the short notice fight, along with $42,000 in sponsorship, and Pereira claimed after the fight that he convinced Dana White to make his performance bonus $303,000 rather than the standard $50K. Add in his pay-per-view revenue of $750,000, and you end up with $4,345,000. Possibly a bit conservative, but pretty close to Burns' $5 million number. And in October, he rounded out his year at UFC 307 in Salt Lake City, Utah, where he took on the challenger Khalil Roundtree. While easily his toughest fight of the year and most exciting, because he was given full notice and a full camp, I'm guessing he went back to his standard purse of closer to $2 million, as well as his sponsorship pay and a $50K fight of the night bonus, plus $500,000 in pay-per-view revenue, comes out to a total of $2,842,000. Which for the year puts him at more than double Stipe's total, a massive $11,879,000. And finally, number 1 on the list is the GOAT, Dana White's favorite fighter, Jon Bones Jones. Jones also fought only once this year at UFC 309, however, being the highest paid active fighter on the roster means he sits atop the list for the second straight year. Earlier in the year, DMs with Jones were leaked, in which he made the bold claim that he'd be securing a $15 million payday with this fight. And as it turns out, he wasn't that far off. Allegedly, the UFC offered him the exact terms they presented Francis Ngannou during his negotiations, meaning he earned a staggering $12 million guaranteed, and also took the champion's rate of $42,000 in Venom sponsorship, along with a $50,000 performance of the night bonus. And as big a star as Jones is, he earns an elevated pay-per-view rate, which at 700,000 buys, totals another $1.1 million. That brings the grand total to just under $13.2 million. That's all for this episode. Any corrections to the numbers I've shown will be listed in a pinned comment below. As always, thanks for watching. See you next week for UFC 311, Makhachev vs. Sarukian 2.